When someone with an avoidant personality begins to love you deeply, it rarely looks like the love you've seen in movies or read about in novels. It doesn't explode in grand gestures or poetic declarations. Instead, it appears quietly, in whispers, in small, almost hidden expressions that speak volumes if you're paying attention. See, an avoidant person has spent a lifetime protecting themselves from being hurt, rejected, or engulfed by someone else's expectations. So when they love you, they fight every instinct that tells them love is dangerous, and that is what makes their love so powerful. In the beginning, you might notice how careful they are with words. They might seem distant, cautious, even unpredictable. But as their walls slowly begin to crumble, they start saying things that reveal the depth of their feelings, even if they don't realize it themselves. These aren't just words, they're confessions wrapped in vulnerability. The first thing you'll often hear is something like, "I just need a little time." At first, it might sound like avoidance, but it's actually honesty. For someone who has built their life around emotional safety, admitting that they need space is their way of not running away completely. It's a sign that they're trying to stay just at a pace that feels manageable. They're saying, "Please be patient with me. I'm not used to this kind of closeness." And if you can hear that truth beneath the hesitation, you'll see that love is quietly beginning to take root. Then one day, they'll surprise you by saying, "I've been thinking about you." For an avoidant, that's huge. It means you've crossed the invisible line from being just another person in their world to someone who occupies their mind even when you're not there. That's not casual. That's care breaking through their fear. They don't say it to manipulate you or get attention, they say it because the thought of you has become a constant presence they can no longer suppress. Later, you might hear, "I'm not good at this." Those words are gold. They're not excuses, they're admissions of struggle. It's a rare moment of humility where they're telling you, "I care enough about you to want to do this right, but I'm scared I'll mess it up." When they let you see their imperfections instead of hiding behind emotional armor, it's their way of saying, "You matter more than my pride." And then comes the quiet confession, "I trust you." You won't hear it often, but when you do, take it seriously. Trust is sacred to the avoidant. It's not given, it's earned through consistency, safety, and genuine understanding. That sentence means you've become someone they can finally exhale around, someone whose presence doesn't feel like a threat but a refuge. Finally, one day, almost without realizing it, they'll say, "I don't want to lose you." That's the moment everything changes, because for an avoidant, admitting attachment is terrifying. Yet, in saying those words, they're revealing the one thing they've always feared most: dependence on another person. It's their heart's way of saying, "You've become my safe place, and now that I've found it, I don't want to let it go." So when you're loved by someone who struggles to love, understand that every small expression, every hesitant word, and every vulnerable sentence is a step toward healing, not just theirs, but yours too. Because love, when it's real, doesn't demand perfection. It asks for patience, empathy, and the courage to see beyond fear into the heart that's learning how to stay. When an avoidant person says, "I just need a little time," it's easy to misinterpret it as rejection or emotional distance. To someone who craves closeness, it can sound like they're pulling away, like they're not as invested as you are. But in truth, that phrase often holds a much deeper meaning, one that comes from a place of vulnerability rather than indifference. For someone with avoidant tendencies, love can feel overwhelming. It's not that they don't want intimacy, it's that they've spent so long equating closeness with loss of control, disappointment, or emotional pain that when love starts to feel real, their natural instinct is to retreat just enough to feel safe again. So, when they say they need time, they're not trying to leave you, they're trying not to lose themselves. This moment where an avoidant person asks for time is often the first true sign that they're learning how to love differently. They're resisting the urge to disappear completely, to vanish into silence like they might have done in the past. Instead, they're trying to stay connected, but at a pace they can emotionally handle. What they're really saying is, I want this, but I need to feel safe while I do. It's a delicate balance between their heart, which is drawn to you, and their mind, which is screaming for self-protection. And understanding that difference is key to seeing the love behind their hesitation. When you're on the receiving end of those words, patience becomes your most powerful form of love. The avoidant person doesn't respond well to pressure. If they feel cornered or rushed, their fear of losing autonomy intensifies, and they may withdraw further. But when you give them time, real, compassionate time, you allow them to build trust in the space between. Every moment they take to process their emotions, every small return after a pause, becomes a quiet promise that they're trying. They may not show affection in grand ways, but every effort to stay, even if it's imperfect, is a sign of deepening emotional investment. There's also something profoundly honest about those words. Unlike people who might hide behind affection or say what they think you want to hear, an avoidant person who says they need time is being transparent about their limits. It's their way of admitting, I care about you enough not to fake comfort. That honesty is worth more than forced reassurance, because when they finally do let you in fully, it will be real, not a performance born of guilt or pressure. They're choosing to build love slowly on their terms, which means that once they commit, they do so with intention and loyalty. So, I just need a little time isn't the language of disinterest, it's the language of self-awareness. It's the pause before transformation, the quiet before the trust fully blooms. When you can hear it through the lens of empathy instead of insecurity, it becomes clear that time isn't what they're asking for, its safety. And when safety meets patience, that's when real love begins to take shape. When an avoidant person says, I've been thinking about you, those words carry far more depth than they might seem to on the surface. For most people, that phrase may sound casual or even routine, but for someone who has spent their life guarding their emotions, it's a moment of profound honesty. Avoidant individuals are often highly self-contained. They build emotional boundaries not out of arrogance, but as a way to feel safe. They have trained themselves to not depend too much on anyone, to not dwell on feelings that might make them vulnerable. So when they allow themselves to think about someone, and more importantly, admit it, it means something inside them is shifting. You've made it past the walls they thought were impenetrable. When they tell you that you've been on their mind, it's not casual observation. It's a subtle confession of attachment. For someone avoidant, thinking about you is both comforting and confusing. On one hand, you represent warmth, connection, and emotional depth, things they secretly crave. On the other, those same things stir up their deepest fears of dependency or loss of control. They often try to suppress these thoughts, distract themselves with work, hobbies, or solitude, but when they can no longer keep you out of their thoughts, it becomes undeniable that their feelings are real. Admitting it aloud is their way of testing emotional safety. They're revealing a truth they would usually keep hidden, waiting to see how you'll respond. It's a sign that you've begun to occupy emotional space in their world, even when you're not physically there. You've become a quiet presence in their daily life, in their routines, in moments of silence, in the middle of their day when they least expect it. For an avoidant person, that's both terrifying and beautiful. It means connection is happening despite their best efforts to stay detached. It means you're not just someone they like. You're someone who has started to matter deeply. When they share this with you, how you respond matters a great deal. If you meet their vulnerability with pressure, demands, or excessive excitement, it can make them retreat again, fearing that they've given away too much too soon. But if you receive their words with calm appreciation, you reinforce the sense that emotional openness is safe with you. That's the key. Avoidant people learn safety not through intensity, but through steadiness, through knowing that when they take a small emotional risk, it won't explode into overwhelming expectations. The truth is, I've been thinking about you, is one of the most intimate things an avoidant can say. It might not sound like a grand romantic gesture, but it represents emotional courage, the quiet bravery to let someone see a glimpse of their inner world. They're saying, in their own unspoken way, you're important to me, even when I try not to think about it. For them, thinking of you isn't just a habit, it's evidence of love slowly softening fear. It's the heart's way of saying, you're not just passing through, you've found a place in me. When an avoidant person says, I'm not good at this, it's one of the most revealing and vulnerable statements you'll ever hear from them. On the surface, it might sound like self-criticism or even an excuse, but underneath those words lies a quiet truth. They're admitting that love doesn't come easily to them, not because they don't care, but because caring deeply brings up every fear they've worked hard to bury. It's a confession of inadequacy, not in who they are, but in how they express love. They are saying, in their own guarded way, I'm trying, but I don't always know how. That's not detachment, that's courage. It takes immense bravery for someone who has built emotional walls to acknowledge that those walls sometimes keep them from giving you what they truly want to give. For most avoidant individuals, vulnerability feels like exposure. They grew up learning that closeness could mean rejection, that expressing needs might lead to disappointment, and that love often comes with conditions. So instead of leaning into emotion, they learn to rely on independence and self-sufficiency. When they say, I'm not good at this, it's their way of confronting that conditioning. They're acknowledging that emotional intimacy challenges everything they've taught themselves about survival. That sentence, small as it may seem, represents a powerful shift from defensiveness to awareness. It's them saying, I see that you deserve more, and I want to learn how to give it even if it scares me. Those words also reveal trust. Avoidant people don't like to show imperfection. They value control over their emotions, their environment, and how others perceive them. Admitting weakness goes against every instinct they have. So when they confess they're not good at this, they're allowing you to see a side of them they rarely show anyone, the uncertain, self-doubting part that hides behind the mask of composure. It's a risk they take only when they feel emotionally safe enough to be real, and that's what makes those words so meaningful. They're not just admitting a flaw, they're letting you in. The most important thing to understand when you hear this is that they're not asking for perfection, they're asking for patience. Love, for them, is a skill they're still learning. They might struggle with communication, they might withdraw when things get intense, or they might seem unsure about how to comfort you when you're upset. But behind those awkward moments is someone who's trying to unlearn years of emotional avoidance. They're not telling you, I can't love you. They're saying, I want to, but I need help figuring out how. And if you can meet that with compassion instead of frustration, you create an environment where growth becomes possible. So, when an avoidant says, I'm not good at this, it's not a sign of failure, it's a milestone of honesty. It's the moment when they stop pretending to be invincible and start showing up as human. That simple phrase is a bridge between fear and connection, a doorway to a more authentic kind of love where imperfection is no longer something to hide, but something to heal through together. When an avoidant person says, I trust you, those three words carry a depth that often goes unnoticed. For most people, trust develops naturally as they get to know someone, but for someone with avoidant tendencies, trust is not something that flows easily. It's something earned, built slowly and carefully over time, through consistency, gentleness, and emotional safety. Avoidant individuals have often learned, through experience or upbringing, that trust can lead to pain, that letting someone in too deeply might mean losing control or being hurt. So when they finally reach the point where they can say, I trust you, it's not casual, it's monumental. It's a declaration that you've become someone who makes them feel safe enough to let their guard down, even just a little. To understand the weight of those words, you have to understand what trust costs them. Avoidant people often live in a constant state of emotional self-protection. They rely on themselves, they avoid leaning on others, and they maintain independence as a shield against disappointment. To trust someone means surrendering a bit of that control, and for them, that's terrifying. It means allowing another person the power to affect their emotions, to potentially hurt them, to see the parts of themselves they usually keep hidden. When they tell you they trust you, they're not saying it lightly. They're giving you access to a part of their heart that very few people ever get to touch. This trust doesn't appear suddenly. It grows in the quiet moments, in the times you've shown up when they didn't expect you to, when you respected their space instead of demanding closeness, when you listened instead of judging, when you stayed consistent even when they pulled away. Each of those moments builds evidence in their mind that you are safe. They begin to notice that being close to you doesn't mean losing themselves. They begin to realize that love doesn't have to be chaotic or overwhelming. It can be calm, steady, and kind. Over time, that realization becomes trust. When they finally express it, it might not come in a dramatic way. They might say it softly, almost as if they're testing how it feels to let those words out. But make no mistake, that moment is a turning point. It means they no longer see you as a threat to their autonomy. It means they believe you'll handle their vulnerability with care. It means they're willing to start building something real, not from fear, but from faith. The beautiful thing about an avoidant person's trust is that once it's given, it's genuine. They don't trust easily, so when they do, they mean it completely. And that trust becomes the foundation for deeper emotional connection. It's the invisible bridge between their fear and their love, the proof that you've created a space where their heart feels safe to rest. In their world, I trust you isn't just a statement. It's the most intimate form of love they know how to give. When an avoidant person says, I don't want to lose you, it's not just an expression of love, it's a moment of profound vulnerability. Those words rarely come easily to someone who has spent most of their life trying not to depend on anyone. Avoidant individuals are experts at emotional self-preservation. They convince themselves that they're safer alone, that needing someone is a weakness, and that detachment protects them from pain. But when they say they don't want to lose you, it means something extraordinary has happened. You've become more than just someone they care about. You've become someone they feel emotionally connected to in a way that defies their old rules of protection. For them, that realization is both beautiful and terrifying. When they voice those words, it means they've allowed themselves to feel the very thing they've always feared: attachment. And that attachment challenges everything they believe about safety and control. For someone who's used to keeping their heart guarded, the idea of losing someone they've grown close to feels almost unbearable. It's not just about losing your presence, it's about losing the comfort, the safety, and the quiet sense of belonging that your connection gives them. To an avoidant person, emotional intimacy often feels like standing on a cliff, thrilling but dangerous. So, when they confess they don't want to lose you, it's their heart's way of admitting that the risk of love has become worth it. Those words also mark a turning point in their emotional evolution. Avoidant people rarely acknowledge their dependence on another person because it makes them feel exposed. But when they say this, they're breaking through that inner resistance. They're no longer hiding behind detachment or pretending they don't care. Instead, they're expressing something raw, something deeply human: fear of loss. That fear doesn't come from insecurity. It comes from connection. It means they've let you in far enough that your absence would genuinely hurt. That's not weakness, that's growth. It's important to understand that for them, saying this is not about seeking reassurance or manipulation. It's a confession that takes courage. It's them admitting, "You matter to me in a way that scares me." And the fact that they can articulate that even in such a simple phrase is proof that love has softened their defenses. You've become someone they can't easily replace or forget. That's why their tone might sound uncertain when they say it, because they're not used to hearing themselves be that open. When an avoidant person reaches this level of emotional honesty, it's a powerful testament to the trust and connection that's been built. It's not just a declaration of love, it's an acknowledgement of transformation. The person who once believed that closeness was dangerous now realizes that losing you would hurt more than staying guarded ever could. And in that moment, love wins not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet, courageous kind that grows when fear finally learns to surrender to connection. In the end, love from an avoidant person isn't loud or obvious, it's quiet, deliberate, and deeply sincere. Every hesitant word, every small act of honesty, and every moment of vulnerability is their way of saying, "I'm trying to love you the best way I know how." It's proof that even the most guarded hearts can learn to open when met with patience, safety, and understanding. Real love isn't about perfection. It's about growth, trust, and the courage to stay when it would be easier to run. Thank you for listening, for believing in compassion over judgment, and for remembering that sometimes the softest love stories are the strongest ones of all.